Hello, Gaston County. Welcome to episode number 156 of Gaston's Great, a podcast highlighting some of the great things happening in and around Gaston County. I'm your host, Stephen Long, and we're coming to you once again from the worldwide headquarters of GSM Services right here in downtown Gastonia. We simply believe in discussing more of the reasons why Gaston's great. We have another great guest on today as we have Adrien Sanders with us. Adrien is the Gaston County Recovery Court Coordinator. Did I say that right?
You sure did.
All right. Well, good. Well, Adrien, it's great to have you on, and welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you so much. It's great to be here.
So you're welcome, and we're going to get right to it as we normally do. So just, if you don't mind, just start out with just tell us a little bit about yourself, anything that you would like to share.
Sure. Well, my name is Adrien, and I have the privilege of serving as the coordinator for Gaston County's Recovery Court program. That is an adult treatment court. So it's a specialty court, meaning all of our participants, they are facing incarceration. These are folks whose crimes stem from substance use, and so this is an alternative approach to allow them to stay in the community, receive the treatment and services they need, still being on supervision,
Right.
And have that accountability, but it's an effort to truly make a meaningful and impactful difference. So that's the program that I get to coordinate, which is an exciting thing to do. And although I feel like a little bit of a traitor, I live just over the county line,
Like, you mean like east of here? Over the river?
Little north.
Okay. Well, north is okay.
Okay.
We're okay with north. As in Lincolnton?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
yes, and we're all about Lincolnton. It's the other. If you go east of here, that's,
No, I'm north, so we're good.
Yeah, that's excellent.
But
yeah.
I still consider myself part of this community
Okay.
because I've worked in public service here for the last 25 years.
Oh, wow.
So I feel like I belong. And so we'll talk about all the work stuff,
Yeah.
through this conversation. But I'll just say a little bit about me when I'm not at work.
Okay.
I enjoy traveling, going to theater shows. And if there's any fans of the TV show Ted Lasso, I am a huge fan of that. And I am eagerly awaiting that recently announced
Yes.
season 4. I have a small poster in my office, and it's got the quote on there, "Be curious, not judgmental."
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And
Yep.
I think that ties into
So,
what we do.
I'm probably not as big a fan as you, but I am a big fan of Ted Lasso. That is a show my wife and I watched. Both my girls played soccer growing up. So yeah, I'm actually a big soccer fan. So it's a great show and a lot of good lessons from that show.
Absolutely.
When you get good entertainment and it's got lessons involved, that's a good combination.
Can't beat that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So Adrien, if you don't mind, maybe how did you wind up here? Kind of just the history on getting into this line of work. I mean, kind of what's that journey? What's that journey been like?
Sure. Well, initially, I would say kind of the interest got sparked in college. I took some criminology classes, had a great professor, and that got me kind of moving in the criminal legal system.
Okay.
Now, once I got there, I used to work at the local prison at Gaston Correctional Center.
Okay. In Dallas? Or?
In Dallas,
All right.
yes.
Yeah.
So
Know exactly where that is.
Spent some time there. But when I was there working as a case manager, you could see just how many people are incarcerated for crimes stemming from substance use.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, is the incarceration really going to break that cycle? And sure, there's some programming available at the prison, but is it really meaningful and impactful to where that cycle can be broken? But I remember working there and talking to some family members, like of inmates that were incarcerated.
Okay.
And their family would say things like, "Oh, I'm so glad they got, as they put it, locked up because they can get the help they need." And I'm thinking, well, that's odd. Surely there's another way to get the help without this being the place to get it. And then when I moved on and worked at social services, I would talk to family members again, and they would say things like, "Oh, I just hope they get arrested so they can go to jail and get the help they need."
Oh, gosh. Wow.
Yeah, and I thought there's got to be some type of program that we can catch people before it gets to that point, right? And really make a difference. So, I've had those experiences through work, but then I'd also occasionally watch news programs, and they would cover treatment courts.
Okay.
And I would see some things, and it's a motivational courtroom. There's clapping, and there's a lot of support and encouragement. I'm like, this does not look like a regular courtroom, and it's making a difference. And so I'm just thrilled now that we have that program here. and I get to be a part of it. So that's how I ended up in the spot that I'm in.
All right. So that's a lot. Excuse me. And so how did this come about here in Gaston County? Because if I understand, we were talking a little bit before we started recording, and we won't repeat everything that we said before we were recording, which might get us in trouble. Roughly, this has been around, how long has it been around here in Gaston County? Let me just ask you that.
Our current version, we have been operational since April of last year.
Okay.
So just over 1 year. There was a prior attempt at treatment court, but, lessons learned.
Yeah.
And so they paused it for about 1.5 years. And so we've been up and running and are doing really well. I can't take credit for it getting established here. There were some people, years ago that decided that this was something to pursue.
Right.
And I know that actually it's the Gaston County Police Department that played a role in that.
Okay.
Getting some funding. I actually worked through the police department. So, there's a lot.
Yeah, because they're seeing that every day, just like you guys are, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. And when it's the same people over and over and over, you got to find a different approach to hopefully get some solutions.
Is there a difference between, it seems like we had, it's probably been a couple years ago, we had Travis Page and Judge Greenlee and Chad Hawkins on. It seemed like we were talking about, it seemed like it was the Veterans Recovery Court or Veterans Court. Is that something similar? Or was that the first attempt, or is that something completely separate?
That is actually a separate program.
Okay.
It's a specialty court. There
Okay.
are lots of different types of specialty courts. And the Veterans Court offices are actually just down the hall from my office. So I see them. And it's a different.
But that was just launching court at the time too. It seems like when we first spoke. That was like episode 80 something. So that's been several years ago. So, in your own journey getting to here and just your experience, and this goes back to college, professional, whatever, what kind of, some of these questions I come up with, what's kind of some leadership, because we like to talk about leadership. We like to talk about community. We like to talk about just that journey that, local professionals and community servants have been on. Because ultimately what you're doing, in my view, is it's a community service, type work. And so what's kind of some of your leadership lessons that you've learned, discovered along the way that have made an impact on you?
Okay. There's been lots of them. Some learned the hard way. It's always nice when you can just take training and someone tells you and you can implement it, but that's usually not how we learn those lessons. One of the things that strikes me currently is, in leadership, sometimes we have a desire to, I need to know everything about the organization. I need to know how to do every single thing that this is, that occurs in the organization. It's really hard to do, and the word you hear is, just delegate. That is easier said than done.
Sure it is. I
For
agree.
me, that's actually really hard. I remember a training that I went through 20 years ago. Don't remember the instructor's name. Don't remember anything else about this, but something stood out to me. She gave us, sitting in a classroom, she gives us problems to solve, right? Like things that we could face as leaders. And we are furiously scribbling down stuff and figuring out how we're going to, solve these problems, right? We're so smart. We're figuring out how to solve all the problems. And we completely missed the assignment. All of us were just completely wrong. And she laughed at us and she said, here's the deal. It's not always your problem to solve. Part of what you need to do as a leader is figure out who in your team is equipped to best handle that and let them shine, let them use their experience, let them use their expertise to help and contribute so that we as leaders don't necessarily have to fix everything.
Yeah, so understanding the team dynamics and the skills and what's best. And it's interesting that what an impact, right? Because you said that was 20 years ago?
Yeah, that training was 20 years ago.
And you can still describe it in that much detail. So some of those lessons we do carry those on with us over a long period of time.
Yeah, and I would say that lesson in particular is really important for me now, simply because I'm part of a multidisciplinary team. I'm not a judge. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a treatment provider. I don't have those skills. So I can't know every single thing. I can't bring their 25 years of experience in, and take that on myself. So it's really nice being part of a multidisciplinary team to let everybody bring their own experience and their subject matter experts in their field. And I think as a leader, that's something that's really important.
Yeah, my experience too is over a few years, in the professional world, especially, is like you said early on. You think you have to have all the answers, and you have to know everything about everything that you're dealing with. But gosh, I don't have the bandwidth to know all the answers and know everything, even here at our company, what's going on every day. So that can take a little humility and understanding and self-awareness about, let the people around you and the teammates you have do their thing, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's nice to have that trust.
Sure.
Because I think that's another thing as a leader, you have to trust people. And that allows them to trust that they get to do their jobs. And we can trust that they have the experience to do that.
All right, so kind of similar, but how does, I mentioned earlier, we love talking about leadership here. We love talking about community here. How has community, how does that play into what you're doing in your personal and professional journey and over the years and what you do now? It seems obvious a little bit, but I'm sure there's more to it than just Gaston County Recovery Court.
Right. I would say community is essential, especially for our program in a couple different facets. And I'll start off by saying there's a TED Talk that exists, and forgive me, I don't remember his name.
Okay.
I don't know.
I'm a big fan of some TED Talks, yes.
So there's a TED Talk out there where the guy is talking about, like, the gist of it is that the opposite of addiction is not necessarily sobriety, that the opposite of addiction is connection, a sense of belonging, a sense of community. And so I think that is really, really important because people think, the opposite of addiction would just be don't use drugs. So I think there's a lot more to it than that. But I think his point was best illustrated. I've had the opportunity to sit in rooms with people in long-term recovery. And I have heard some of the things they've said that, I don't have that lived experience. So it's really nice to hear from them. And in one of those rooms, somebody threw the question out to some people with lived experience who were in long-term recovery and said, what was it that brought you into treatment? Like, what helped you start your recovery journey? And some lady jumped up. She was real happy. She wanted to share. And she said that she ended up going to a food bank. And I forget all the details of how she got connected with them, but I think she went for services, like to receive help.
Right.
And she ended up, I don't know if you had to or if they just invited her, but she ended up like working as a volunteer there one day. And she said the other volunteers, they embraced her, like did not treat her differently, didn't look at her where she felt stigmatized. She didn't feel like an outcast. And they treated her just like she was one of them. And she said that was really powerful to her. And that when she went back voluntarily to do it again because she felt like they embraced her. And so when she did that, that is what gave her the confidence. She felt self-worth. She felt that she was worthy of recovery. And that is what started her journey. And so I think community is really impactful. It is that be curious, not judgmental quote.
So that's interesting. I mean, I read a lot, have learned a lot, listen to a lot of podcasts, and there's no question that we're not designed to be solo. And we're humans are designed to be in a community, to interact with others. That's one reason I think COVID, I don't like to say that word anymore, was kind of so the underlying issue was that we were separated so much, right? And to your point, also I think I've read that's one reason in general, like Alcoholics Anonymous is so successful, right? It's a small community, you get a sponsor, so there's this constant contact. So and there's no question that if you get yourself in a community, you can be more successful, however you define success. I do realize that people define success differently, but it's just more, there's no question that so many things are so much harder on your own. And I would assume that addiction is probably one of those things that you just, if you don't have help, if you're not willing to get help, you don't have a community around you, I can imagine that being just much more difficult.
Or if the only community you have is not a great influence.
Right.
And so getting that support system built up, I think is essential.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's hard too. It's hard to get out of that, something that you're used to or something that you're comfortable with. So I appreciate you sharing that. So what about something along the way, personally, professionally, related to this? Is there something that you're just you look back and say, man, that's something that I was involved with or I accomplished or something I'm really proud of that you can share with us?
Well, pride goeth before the fall, right? So I don't want to be saying too much about "yay me" and I'm proud of this, but
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yes.
So it's going to sound like a weird thing to go back to when I was a kid,
Okay.
and did Girl Scouts. And
All
so
right.
for any Girl Scout leaders listening, forgive me for butchering this. I don't remember like the law and the promise exactly,
Okay.
but there's concepts of friendly, fair, caring, helpful, leave
Right.
the world a better place than you found it. And I'm really proud that my work has enabled me to kind of live that out.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Because, we teach children those things, and then we, launch them in the world, and we hope they do good things. And so I'm really proud that the work that I've been able to do in my career serves the public and offers people help so that they can improve their lives.
Offer them some humanity
Absolutely.
when they may not be getting it otherwise. Yeah, it's interesting that we remember those lessons from we were younger. I was in Y Guides and then Boy Scouts for a while. I'm not an Eagle Scout, but I did get through some of that. So yeah, and even I remember those lessons growing up. And you know what? Ultimately, it's I've got 3 kids, and I've learned the hard way that they are watching what I do more than they are listening.
Absolutely.
And so to your point, you're able to. You're when you have that opportunity to look back, yeah, maybe I'm setting that example. That's good. That's not prideful. That's just one reason we ask that type of question is there might be some listeners out there. We want listeners to have some examples of that, right? But sometimes some people don't see those examples. It's just get up, go to work, come home. Get up, go to work, come home. But everybody's making an impact in anything that they're doing. They just might not realize it. They need somebody else to show them that or tell them that.
It's nice to see the purpose.
Absolutely. So what about any key factors getting to your point, to this point, and what you kind of just described, your business success, personal success, anything that you would share there?
I would say I'm going to do it as far as like success for the program. Huge shout out. I'm one person. Recovery court cannot run with one person.
Yeah, I saw the team online. There's a great, there's a great little section on the Gaston Gov website and about this and about the team, and
yes,
that's
yes.
there.
So there's a lot of good people that are involved, and I would say a key factor to our success is the passion in our team. Some people show up on a team because their boss says, "Oh, well, you're on this committee. You
Right.
get to do this now."
Right.
We have people who want to be there. They have a passion for this. They believe in this. And it takes buy-in, because this isn't like an alternative approach. You sit in our courtroom, and it is not like any other courtroom you're going to sit in. And it's so nice to see the passion. But I'm going to take I think tying that in as a key factor is the cycle. We talk about breaking the cycle of addiction and like reducing recidivism. We have a fantastic cycle in our program. And it is that the team is passionate, and we hope that we are able to provide opportunities to our program participants. But then when we see their hard work, and let me just say that we're asking them to change a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And none of us would probably want to take on that many challenges at one time. And they are putting in the hard work every single day in, day out, really hard work. And that is so inspirational to us as the staff on the team.
Right.
And when we see that, it motivates us to stay in this and stay on top of this and learn as much as we can. And I think we have a great cycle going on in our courtroom that
that's good.
We provide the opportunities to the participants, and the participants.
Yeah, my experience, a little success with something like this or anything, I don't know, for me it breeds wanting to see more success, right? And to see more people impacted and see more things that happen. And it's interesting that you say people, you have people that show up every day, except occasionally when they leave you hanging to come to a podcast when they were supposed to show up. But we won't.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
we won't mention any names, but you know who you are, because I'm sure they're going to listen to this episode.
They better.
Yeah. So, so anyway, so what's next? For you, the recovery court. Are there big plans, or is it just continue the work? What can you share there?
I don't want to speak on behalf of every single team member, but I'm here, so I'll speak for me.
Okay.
We're new. You hear a year and you're like, well, that's not brand new, but in the scheme of things, it really is as big as this program, as many things that need to be in place. So we're still strengthening that foundation to make sure that what we're doing is the way it needs to be done and the way that it's going to make the biggest impact. but I'd like to see some type of growth on the horizon.
Okay.
And I don't know if that is increasing the number of our participants or if it is maybe considering another specialty court. You know, you mentioned Veterans Court, that's a specialty court, but there's other types that exist, whether that's family treatment courts, DUI courts, mental health courts. There's a lot of other specialty courts that exist. And so I don't know if growth for us is growing our own individual program
Understood,
or
yeah.
if it's increasing specialty courts. But as we build our foundation, that's what's on the horizon.
Yeah, we've had so many organizations, great organizations on over the last 4 or 5 years that occasionally will say, it'd be great if this service wasn't needed.
Feel free to put me out of business.
Yeah, but I just, unfortunately, right, we don't see that that occurring. So this just triggered another question. I'm sure this may be common sense, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. How do these individuals get connected with you? Is it just from the police department? Is it from the situation they find themselves in? And how do they get in front of you?
Sure. So what happens is, and you mentioned our website, there's some information about that on there,
Okay.
but what'll happen is pretty much everybody, they have to be facing criminal charges
Okay.
or a probation violation. Like there has to be a court case. We can't bring someone into the court system
Understood, yeah.
if they're not already, and we
That's
don't
why I
want to bring
say I
someone
would think
in.
it's common sense, but I've learned that lesson the hard way too.
No, I've been asked that question, and
Yeah.
I'm like, we can't just we don't want to bring someone into the criminal legal system if they're not already
Right.
in it. So, we're trying to reduce harm, not
Correct.
add to it.
Correct.
But
Understood.
most people, what'll happen is when they're facing, and we're in Superior Court. So this is not a program that is designed for first offenders, simple possession, things like that. We are working with high risk, which means they are at increased risk of recidivism, and they are high need for treatment. So there's some strict criteria to get into the program, but typically referrals are coming from public defenders, like the defense attorneys.
Right.
I'm trying to link their clients to a program that can provide that meaningful help. Probation officers, who they've got people that can't comply with regular supervision, and they're facing probation, which is going to send them right back into prison for several months. They can also refer in, and so other attorneys can make those referrals. That's typically how people get in front of us.
All right.
And then they'll plead guilty to the pending charge or admit the probation violation. And then all of our participants are as part of their sentence, they are placed on probation. And then a condition of their probation is to complete this program.
Gotcha.
So they can volunteer in. Can't really volunteer out because once you're in, it's a condition.
Right.
And you got to comply. But we're not seeing a lot of resistance.
Are you working with partners here locally for recovery programs that go along with it, or how does that work, or is that not a good question?
No, sure. That's
Yeah.
absolutely a good question. Like I said, I'm one person sitting in the room, and there's a lot of team members.
Oh, sure.
And so it is the probation department and defense attorneys, our case manager, but we also have, and our judge in the district attorney's office, but we have Phoenix Counseling Center.
Okay.
That is providing
I think I do. I remember
services.
seeing that on the website. Yep.
And we have just brought in a new provider, and that is Insights in Recovery, that is going to be working with us and providing services to our participants. So, definitely we have those resources, but then also your treatment providers know other community resources.
Sure.
And so it's just this web that goes out
Right.
to where we can get those services.
All right. Well, that's good. So, Adrien, are there anything I haven't asked, something that you want to make sure you get across? Of course, before we finish, we'll make sure you can share how to find out more information, the website, just anything before we finish up. But there's anything I haven't asked that I should have? Anything you'd like to share before we kind of move on to a couple of more questions and before we finish up?
Well, I don't want to say you should have asked this, but you mentioned earlier one of the things you said was about success.
Right.
And so I'd like to just define success for our program
Okay.
if I can.
Very good. Yeah, that's
because
good.
I feel like a lot of people are going to hear, people come into this program, they get their treatment, they get the services they need, and now they're cured, right? This is the magic cure. We have a magic wand, and this fixes the issue. And if it were only that simple. So success is, just like we said, the opposite of addiction is a sense of connection. It may not be 100% sobriety, because long-term recovery takes longer
Oh,
than
yeah.
18 months, 24 months, which is how long someone will be in our program. It takes longer than that. So I would say success, it's not perfection, but it's progress. And so success for me, if I see one of our, someone graduates our program, which we're not there yet, but we're almost there.
Right.
When we have people graduate, success for the way I view it is if they have the tools they need and have built the support system so that when they have challenges, and they will, it's not an if, it's a when. All of us have challenges. They just differ in what they are, that they have the tools they need. They have the skills they need, and they have a support system so that any lapse, whether like a one-time occurrence or just even the temptation, doesn't turn into a relapse or a prolonged return to use.
Right.
That they have the skills to maintain that long-term recovery. And so I never want anybody to think that a participant has failed. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
It's success really is progress, not perfection. We can't be perfect ourselves.
Oh,
Why
yeah.
would we hold someone else to that standard?
And I think that applies for me, everything we do every day. Are we a little better today than we were yesterday? Or can we be a little better tomorrow than we were today in some area of our life? And I mean, for me, gosh, progress it's just good. It feels good to make some progress. Sometimes I come to work and I'm like, what did I do today? I have no idea. So progress, I appreciate you sharing that, because I think someone ignorant of this type of situation and program, it's good to hear, that outlook. And so I appreciate you sharing that. So just a few more questions, Adrien, and let's get back to serving the community as you do. But remember, this is, the name of this podcast is Gaston's Great, right? So we do like to touch on that, and even though you might not live officially in Gaston County, you've been serving this area for a very long time. And the question we like to ask is, besides the recovery court and what you're doing every day, why would you say that Gaston County is such a great place?
Well, I know it is. Otherwise, I wouldn't be working here as long as it is. But I would say that, specific to this program, substance use is a community-wide issue. And what I love in this community, and this does not exist everywhere, even in neighboring counties it doesn't exist. So we have, this Gaston County is embracing and supporting innovative ways to address public health and public safety. And I'm so happy to get to work in a place that is willing to say, let's try something different. Let's see if this works, because maybe there's a better way to have better results. And it's so empowering to work somewhere in a community that embraces that and wants to try, not just to check a box to say, we offered it, we tried it, but to really try to make an impactful difference and improve the community. And I think that's why Gaston's great.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's good. I appreciate that. And that's a good point, too. There can seem to be, I've been involved in the community a long time, and there occasionally can seem to be some of these initiatives that says, check a box, but nothing really happens, right?
Right.
There's they forget about the results part.
Or the why you did it in the first place.
Yeah. All right, another question we'd like to ask, and the question we sent you probably had 2 or 3 of these, and we throw 2 or 3 of those on there because sometimes we have guests that have come back, and we'll want to ask them the same question again. But I love this question. Knowing what you know now, Adrien, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
A lot of advice. But I think the main one that I would go with is, girl, you do not even know it all. Because at 20, I did, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I did at 20.
Do you know it all, Rachel? Okay.
You don't know it all. You're not going to know it all. No matter how many certificates, diplomas, degrees, you're not going to know it all. And you should be confident in your knowledge,
right?
But never complacent, because things are always changing. And if you stop growing and you stop learning, you're going to get left behind. So learning is not just in the classroom. You got to keep going.
Oh, yeah. More often, I'm a big quote guy. These team members here at GSM probably get tired of hearing about my quotes and stuff I send out every week. But there was one that it says something along the line of, don't let schooling get in the way of your education, right? Because you learn so much. So many people think, listen, I learned a lot in Gaston County schools and going off to NC State, the greatest university on the planet. But I learned everything I needed to learn about life in my professional career after graduating, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, 99% of it came after. I learned a lot about myself and how to solve problems and live alone and all those kind of super important things. But most of what I learned about the real world happened after that. So, I'll ask one more question because, you were brave enough to come on without your two cohorts that I am going to mention here shortly. Anybody looking back made a big impact? Somebody personally, professionally, made a big impact on you, leadership, community perspectives. Anybody come to mind?
I would say, I know this is an answer other people are, it's not the most original answer.
Okay.
But it's the most honest. I have amazing parents.
Yeah. Well, that's a great answer. Yeah.
And I mean that sincerely, and so I'm not going to talk a lot about it because otherwise I'm just going to get off track. But amazing parents set a great example, encourage, support, still encourage and support. And just like when I was 20, I thought I knew it all.
Yeah.
They knew I didn't. But they still encourage and support, and they're still mom and dad.
Well, good. That's great to hear.
That's my inspiration there.
All right. So listen, Adrien, this has really been good. Is there any last words, any thing you'd like to close us out with? And then, of course, please share how can our listeners learn more about the Recovery Court, anything specific, the website, just anything and everything you'd like to share there.
So what I will say is, yes, we do have a website, and I think there's a QR code on something for the programming here. Okay. But it's just gastongov.com/recovery court.
Yep.
Take you right there.
I mean, if you just Google Gaston Recovery Court, it comes up. That's how I found it.
Yes.
Real quickly. Yep.
Yes. So it'll pop up at the top there. And so there's a lot of information on there about how the program works, who's part of our team, how you can donate and, support the program. So we were talking about community earlier. And so if I can just do the quick plug for
sure. Absolutely.
The logistics of that, we actually have some people who come into our courtroom. It's an open courtroom. It's public, and the calendar's on the website, so you know when the court dates are. But they come in, and the participants have to be at court twice a month. They know who the other participants are. I mean, they've been doing this. They come together, all the time. Some of them even are staying together at sober living homes. They're in treatment groups together. They know who the other participants are. And they're like, okay, that's not us, and that's not our family, and that's not the team members. And they're seeing people that sit in the courtroom that don't have to be there.
Right.
It's like, what are they doing here? And those folks come to support the participants.
Oh, wow, okay.
And I can walk in the hallway after court ends, and I see those community members talking to the participants, and they're inviting them, whether that's to church services or community organizations or, support meetings like NA or AA or Celebrate Recovery or some of those things. And it's so nice to see that community support. But, other people in the community don't have the time to sit in court on Friday mornings. And so we do have ways to donate. If you do ever sit in our courtroom, we have this wheel that participants can spin. Because, when we're asking people to do a lot of hard things and they do them, they show up. Yeah. And they engage in their treatment, and they're testing negative for substances, and they're doing the good things. We want to encourage them to keep going.
It's okay to celebrate that a little bit, yeah.
We celebrate a lot.
Yeah.
We actually had a standing ovation in our court last week. So it was fun to see. And one of the things on the wheel is $5 gift cards.
Okay.
And it doesn't sound like much, but we've got pictures after court. I've had participants text pictures of them, spending their gift card. It's fun. And that's a way that the community can help.
Okay, so community could donate cards or get involved that way. Is that something that community could do?
Absolutely.
All right.
And the other thing I'll say is there's a lot of employers, business leaders that are listening. And I would just say if you're a recovery-friendly employer, our folks want to work.
Yeah.
Having that sense of purpose is important, and things in life aren't free, so they kind of need some money. But it's hard when you have to be in treatment a couple days a week, and you have to show up for drug testing appointments, and you have to be in court twice a month. So if there are recovery-friendly employers, we would love to make those connections because people are doing good work and they are trying.
Sure.
So I'll leave it at
Yeah,
that.
no,
As
that's
far as
a
how
great. That's a
people
great
can-
way to close it out. And I just gonna say a couple things real quick, and then we'll close this episode out. Adrien, I appreciate your time. I'm grateful for your work, but I'm more grateful, frankly, at this moment that the two other guests that were planning to come, the Honorable Justin Davis and our District Attorney Travis Page, who weren't able to make it today, but they did send the A-team.
Oh, well, thank you so much.
So I'm sure this episode is much more concise and much better information in the fact that those two guys were unable to make it. But I mean, I'm joking. I know them both pretty well, but I do appreciate your time. I appreciate what you're doing. It's one of those things that, gosh, is I mean, it's kind of one of those things maybe some people don't want to hear about. They don't like to hear about it. They don't like to hear these things are going on in our community, right? But it's such a need, in the work that you are doing is so important. And because you know what, grace is a big thing, and as a Methodist especially, that's our big thing, and people deserve grace. And that's kind of how I view Gaston County Recovery Court. It's an opportunity for our community to show some grace to some individuals and give them that second chance or whatever, however you want to describe that. So, and it takes the work of a team, and you can see that on just go on your website. It's it's not just a couple people, right?
No, we've got a good big team.
It's a big good team. So I appreciate that greatly. And I pick out a quote or a book or something I like to talk about, or maybe a podcast I'll share. Maybe I need to start looking up some TED Talks. That reminded me, I do watch TED Talks occasionally. So there are some really good things out there. If you're not familiar with that, I would just encourage you to go to YouTube or TEDTalk.com, and you can find there's discussion on all kinds of topics. But I'm going to share a quote this week, and it really ties in, I think, to what Adrien's doing and her journey. And it's one of my own quotes, which is super rare, but it says, "Great accomplishment only occurs when someone leads the way." That's my experience. When good things are happening, it takes people like Adrien who get involved and are a leader in our community. And really, ultimately, that's my experience anyway, is that so many of the organizations we've talked about, some of the initiatives that we've talked to people over the last 4 or 5 years here on Gaston's Great Podcast, it took one or two people to step up and lead something. And that's how so many good things happen. So, again, I appreciate your time, Adrien, and all your efforts. So to our listeners, thanks so much for taking the time to listen to today's episode. Please continue to spread the word if you can about the podcast, and please don't hesitate to contact us here at our email, which is podcast@gastonsgreat.com. We're always looking for suggestions for future podcast topics and guests. You can find the podcast and subscribe at the website, gastonsgreat.com, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. And please follow us on all our social media platforms. And apparently, giving us a good 5-star rating helps us get noticed. Thanks again to Adrien for being our guest today. Gaston's Great is produced and brought to you for the first time solo by Rachel Cowart today. Good job, Rachel. I'm going to get you on camera here eventually. Yes, very. So I'm your host, Stephen Long. Thanks again for hanging out with us, and please come back to hear more reasons why Gaston's great.